Hi friends, welcome to another video. So as usual, the theme for our videos involve desserts that don't need any special equipment. So no oven, no mixer, just the microwave or a stove top, a refrigerator, and your hands and some whisks and bowls. So today's dessert will be Oreo cheesecake, the no-bake kind, which is one of my favorite desserts. Now, there are a lot of ways by which you can personalize this dessert. Personally, I like my Oreo cheesecake looking like a big Oreo, and so it will be the simplest approach. But I'll let you know along the way what you can do to kind of personalize the dessert depending on your situation and what equipment you have on hand. All right, so let's start. So today we'll need 200 grams of Oreos, which is about 18 pieces, 3 tablespoons butter, melted, 1 8-ounce package of cream cheese, which is about 1 cup, 1/4 cup condensed milk, 1/2 cup whipping cream. Please use whipping cream and not all-purpose cream, 1 teaspoon vanilla and 3 tablespoons white sugar, 3 tablespoons cold water, and 1 tablespoon unflavored gelatin. For the finished product, you will be needing a 6-inch springform pan. Now, if you don't have this or if it's not available, you could also use other containers that are easily on hand. An example would be these 2 glasses, which you can use to actually create individual sized servings of the Oreo cheesecake. Let's start with our crust. So we put all of the Oreos in a Ziploc bag, removing all of the air in it. Then we get our rolling pin and pound our Oreos into a fine crumb. If you don't have a rolling pin, you can also use other heavy objects to do the pounding, like the edge of a heavy book or a filled can. But nothing breakable, please. We don't want to waste the wine from the cupboard. So as mentioned at the beginning of this video, I actually like my Oreo cheesecake looking like a big Oreo. And so I'm actually going to be using half of this crumb for the crust and the other half for the topping. Now, if you want your topping to look different, like maybe have some coarse, bigger pieces of Oreos, you can actually remove half of this before continuing on pounding the rest of it to make a finer crumb for the crust. So we'll continue doing this, pounding the cookie into a fine crumb, maybe once in a while, shifting the cookies around to make sure we get everything. We continue doing this until we're happy with how fine the crumbs are. So once we're happy with the consistency of the cookie crumbs, we can now transfer it into a bowl in order to start making the crust. And it's really going to be simple. Once we transfer all of the crumbs onto the bowl, we add our melted butter into it. And then we just mix, making sure that all of the crumbs are coated with the melted butter. Once all of the crumbs are completely coated with the butter, we'll start making the crust. So as I mentioned before, I'm only going to be using half of these crumbs for the crust because the other half will be going on the top. So I'll get my springform pan and then put in half of the crumbs. So the next step is just basically pack it in tightly using a spoon. So what this means is just basically you will be using the spoon to kind of spread the crumbs around to make sure all of the holes are covered, and then you just press hard on it to flatten it and to make sure all of the crumbs stick together using the melted butter as the adhesive. Now I know that the handle of the spoon can get in the way, so another alternative is to get something with a flat surface and just use that to stamp down on the crust. No, like in this case, I'm using a small sauce bowl to kind of just tamp down on the crust. So we'll use the spoon to kind of just smooth out the surface a bit, and then this goes to the refrigerator to firm up. So the next part will be a major arm workout, so be warned and be prepared. Basically, we will be hand whipping our heavy cream, and we do this by putting our whipping cream in a bowl, and we just start using that arm power and start whipping. Of course, if you have a mixer, you can have the mixer do this for you. You start off with a lower setting until you see these small bubbles form, and then you increase the speed until you see big bubbles form, until finally you can see it thickening up a bit and the stiff peaks form. Now, if you don't have a mixer like what I'm doing now, you're just gonna have to have some patience and some muscle power to basically get this done. So we just keep on whipping until we see the whipped cream kind of thicken a bit, and then as we go on, we can see peaks, stiff peaks form. And so 5 minutes and a very sore arm later, we see our whipping cream start to take form. And we see this most clearly by the streaks that are formed whenever we run the whisk through the cream, like so. And so just a few more run of the whisk, we can see that stiff peaks have already formed, and this is the consistency that we're looking for our whipping cream. So when we're done, we'll keep this in the refrigerator while we make the other parts of the cheesecake. So next up is we need to bloom our gelatin, and we do this by putting our 3 tablespoons of water in a wide based bowl and then just sprinkling the gelatin in a thin layer over the surface of the water. Make sure that the gelatin is distributed well and you kind of see it absorbing some of the water, and that there are no clumps of dry gelatin powder over it, as this will just translate to clumps of gelatin later on when we try to heat it up. So we do this and let it stand for a few minutes before we proceed to the next step. After letting it stand for a few minutes, we put the bowl in the microwave and put it in for bursts of 10 to 15 seconds until all of the gelatin dissolves and there are no more lumps formed. And so here we see a very liquid gelatin, which we will put aside to cool down while we prepare the rest of the cheesecake. So first up, we put in our softened cream cheese, and we will be mixing this until it is smooth. So it's easier to work with softened cream cheese versus one that you just brought out from the refrigerator. So you can try to soften the cream cheese in the microwave by putting it in for like 10 to 15 seconds at a time until it is softened. So once you've mixed the cream cheese into a consistency that is a bit silkier, you can add in your other ingredients like the sugar, the condensed milk, and the vanilla. So we'll be mixing all of these ingredients together until you form a mixture that is lump-free and just really silky in consistency. So again, this will require some arm workout for those without a mixer. If you do have a mixer, you can just put all of these ingredients together and start mixing it until it forms a very silky texture. And because this is a no-bake dessert, however lumpy you leave this mixture will be how lumpy it's gonna be when you put it in your mouth later on. So don't forget to scrape down the sides of the bowl every so often, just to make sure that all of the ingredients have been thoroughly mixed in. Around 5 minutes later, we are getting closer to the consistency that we are looking for. Once we do reach the desired consistency, we will start to incorporate the whipped cream that we prepared earlier. And we do this by folding it in. Now, folding it in allows us to keep the lightness and airiness that we worked so hard for while we were whipping the cream. No? So the resulting cheesecake will be just light and airy, but also at the same time have that silky mouth feel. So we keep on doing this until we don't see streaks of the whipping cream anymore. No, we see that it is fully incorporated. Now, I'm a purist, so I like keeping the cheesecake this way, but some people want some of the bits and pieces of the Oreo in the cheesecake itself. So at this point, you can put in some of the crumbs, or if you want, just like bigger chunks of Oreo into your batter, and just continue folding that in until you're done. Once everything has been incorporated, you can now add in the cooled down gelatin and just mix it in until you can't see the liquid gelatin anymore. Everything has been fully mixed into your cheesecake mixture. Again, try to keep that folding motion just to make sure that your mixture remains light and airy. Once we're finished mixing, we can now start to assemble our cheesecake. And we do this basically by putting the cream cheese mixture on the crust. Again, if you chose a different container, like if you chose individual glasses to create personal cheesecakes, just eyeball how much of the cream cheese mixture you want to add onto there. So you smooth out the top using a spoon. After which you put on your topping. In my case, since I want mine to look like a pretty big Oreo, I am going to put in the other half of my crumbs on top. So I'll spread the crumbs around just to make sure that none of the cream cheese layer peeks out. So I'll try to cover every nook and cranny. And I'm gonna tamp down just a little bit so that I can form that top biscuit of my big Oreo. So after finishing up with the topping, we're gonna need to put this in the refrigerator for a couple hours just so that the cheesecake layer, which uses gelatin, sets and you can have a solid cheesecake that can stand on its own. Just smoothing it out a bit and we're done. So this goes into the refrigerator for a couple hours. So after a few hours in the refrigerator, our cheesecake is now ready to serve. If you are using a springform pan, you can use a knife to loosen the sides up a bit, as the cheesecake would have stuck to the sides of your pan while in the refrigerator. So when you're done, you can remove the sides of the springform pan. So there you have it, your Oreo cheesecake in the form of a gigantic Oreo. Hope you enjoy it, guys!